She was only 9 years old. On a cold afternoon in Spokane, Washington, Candy Rogers stepped outside carrying 7 small boxes of mints. She was supposed to return home before dark. She never did. For more than 60 years, nobody knew who took her, until one forgotten piece of evidence finally exposed the truth. In 1959, Spokane was the kind of city where children walked alone without fear. Neighbors trusted each other. Parents believed the streets were safe. Candy Rogers lived above a small grocery store with her mother. She was shy, small for her age, and loved by everyone around her. Candy was also a member of the Camp Fire Girls organization. And on March 6, 1959, she was excited for one thing: selling mints, not because she wanted money, but because she hoped to earn a badge and qualify for summer camp. At exactly 4 o'clock that afternoon, Candy stepped outside and started knocking on doors. She was expected home before the streetlights came on. But as the evening grew darker, Candy never returned. At first, her family believed she may have stayed too long with neighbors. Then panic began setting in. Her grandfather searched nearby streets. Her mother rushed home after learning Candy was missing. Within hours, police were called. And then, something terrifying was discovered. Boxes of campfire mints scattered across a road known locally as Doomsday Hill. Not dropped, thrown. Investigators believed the boxes may have been tossed from a moving vehicle. That was the moment Spokane realized. This was no ordinary missing child case. Someone had taken Candy Rogers. By the next morning, the entire city knew her name. More than 1,200 volunteers joined the search. Police officers, Boy Scouts, military personnel, even helicopters searched from the sky. But tragedy struck during the operation. A military helicopter searching for Candy crashed into power lines above the Spokane River. 3 crew members lost their lives. And still, there was no sign of Candy. Days passed, then weeks, until finally, searchers made a heartbreaking discovery deep in the woods near an abandoned quarry. Candy Rogers had been found, hidden beneath branches and brush. The cause of death shocked investigators. She had been strangled, using fabric torn from her own clothing. For decades, investigators believed they already knew who the killer was. A violent criminal named Hugh Morse became the center of suspicion. The theory seemed convincing. He had a disturbing history involving young girls, and investigators believed certain evidence connected him to Candy's murder. For years, police were convinced they had the right man. But there was one major problem. DNA testing eventually proved Hugh Morse was not the killer. After decades of certainty, investigators were back at the beginning. The real killer had never appeared in any police report. Not once. The reason this case was finally solved came down to one decision made back in 1959. An investigator preserved key evidence inside a sealed glass jar. At the time, DNA science did not even exist. But that single decision protected biological evidence for more than 60 years. In 2018, investigators reopened the case using forensic genetic genealogy, the same technology used to identify the Golden State Killer. Scientists attempted to extract usable DNA from the preserved evidence. At first, labs rejected the sample. It was old, damaged, nearly impossible to analyze. But one laboratory in Texas agreed to try. And eventually, they found something. The DNA eventually led investigators toward one family. 3 brothers became possible suspects, but only one had children still alive. That led detectives to a woman named Kathy Hoff. She voluntarily provided a DNA sample. The results were devastating. The DNA recovered from Candy Rogers' clothing pointed directly to Kathy's father, John Ray Hoff, a man who had never once appeared as a suspect in the investigation, not in 62 years. Investigators later discovered disturbing similarities between Candy's murder and another attack Hoff committed years later. In that assault, he used the victim's own clothing to restrain and strangle her. The same method used against Candy Rogers. Candy Rogers was only 9 years old. Her case remained unsolved for more than 6 decades. But even after all those years, people refused to forget her. And maybe that is the reason this case was finally solved. Because somewhere along the way, an entire city decided Candy Rogers still mattered. This is Crime Files narrator, and some truths refuse to stay buried.